Welcome to this video on the crisis of Confederation, examining the period from the American Revolution to the U.S. Constitution. Colin Woodard suggests the American Revolution was a conservative action, not a unified uprising. How does this view align with your understanding of July 4, 1776, from the perspective of an ethno-regional nation? After 1763, Britain implemented imperial standardization policies in America. These included new taxes, military occupation, territorial restrictions, and religious control, aiming to subdue the colonies. The American Revolution was a loose alliance of distinct nations fighting to preserve separate cultures. This map illustrates the different responses of ethno-regions to British control between the 1750s and 1770s. Let's examine the historical context that led to the Articles of Confederation and the U.S. Constitution. This timeline shows the historical context of the founding and the U.S. Constitution, from early colonial periods through the Revolutionary War and the establishment of the new government. Here is a timeline of the founding documents, from the Declaration of Independence in 1776 to the ratification of the Bill of Rights in 1791. The period between 1783 and 1786 saw a zone of dissolution, marked by chaos and failure, including fiscal paralysis and anarchy, as depicted on this map of the United States in 1783. This timeline highlights the period of chaos and failure before the Constitution was ratified. A clear timeline of the U.S. founding documents: the Declaration of Independence, Articles of Confederation, Federalist and Anti-Federalist Papers, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. The era of the Articles of Confederation from 1781 to 1788 was a critical period with a weak central authority, leading up to the U.S. Constitution, which established an enduring framework. The geopolitical crucible shows the transition from the AOC crisis landscape, marked by fragmentation and turbulence, to the federal overlay, which established a new hierarchy and a stronger central government. We must consider what the Articles of Confederation were and why they failed. Their failure raised the critical question of whether the United States of America would survive or split up. Next, let's look at the roles of New France and El Norte during this time. France, as the external state actor, served as a military ally to weaken British influence. New France, however, became a conquered subject, resulting in internal conflict and a failed attempt to liberate them. The J. Gardoqui Proposal of 1786 reveals Spanish conflict and ethno-regional leverage. The proposal, which involved forfeiting Mississippi navigation rights, caused a sectional deadlock and conflict, especially impacting the Deep South and Greater Appalachia. Before we delve deeper, let's define the fundamental difference between a confederation and a federation. A confederation, like the Articles of Confederation or the European Union, is a loose alliance of sovereign states with a weak central government, where states retain most power. One major reason the Articles of Confederation failed was due to economic factors, both internal and external, which severely destabilized the new nation. The primary reason for the failure of the Confederation of 13 colonies was that the Articles were structured as a treaty, not a constitution, limiting the central government's authority. Weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation included a weak national government and a lack of executive branch. Congress could not enforce decisions, raise taxes, or regulate commerce, leading to gridlock due to the unanimous consent requirement. The states retained real power under the Articles of Confederation, regulating trade, coining money, and being responsible for law enforcement and defense, further limiting the central government's reach. The failure of the Articles of Confederation between 1781 and 1788 was a result of a combination of economic, social, and political factors. Social and economic conflict escalated by the late 1780s, primarily because Congress requested that states increase taxes to pay off war debt and compensate Continental Army soldiers. The Articles of Confederation also suffered from a power imbalance between big and small states, particularly over claims to vast western lands, causing disputes and delaying ratification. This slide is a placeholder, continuing the discussion on the weaknesses and challenges under the Articles of Confederation. Considering what we've covered, how did the trade and commerce of the North, Middle, and Southern states contrast in the post-independence period of the 1780s and 90s? External economic conditions after the war left Congress and states deeply indebted. The British trade embargo, especially on West Indies sugar colonies, negatively affected the economy. Distrust between the South and the North was palpable. Southern states, exporting cash crops, relied on northern ports or the Mississippi River, and were wary of the northern states' intentions. While southern states like Virginia, North Carolina, and Georgia fared well due to cash crops, others like South Carolina and Maryland experienced financial chaos. Massachusetts saw civil disturbances like Shays's Rebellion, and only Rhode Island prospered. By 1786, the economic crisis was evident. John Jay declared the nation destitute. Congress's institutional crisis meant it lacked revenue authority to deploy troops or grant debt relief. A political crisis arose when Spain denied navigation rights on the Mississippi River, impacting southern states and westward expansion. The U.S. was unable to respond effectively to Spanish and British threats. This slide reinforces the gravity of the political and economic crises facing the nation under the Articles of Confederation. The inability to address external threats and internal divisions highlighted the essential need for a stronger, more unified national government. These challenges underscored the flaws in the Articles of Confederation structure and the limited powers of the Continental Congress. The denial of Mississippi River navigation rights by Spain was a major geopolitical issue that the weak central government could not resolve, fueling Southern discontent. Threats of British takeover along the borderlands further exposed the vulnerability of the United States under the Articles of Confederation. The nation faced a precarious situation, with external pressure and internal turmoil threatening its stability and future. The combination of economic collapse and the threat of civil war made it clear that the existing governmental structure was unsustainable. By 1789, prominent leaders agreed the Articles of Confederation were flawed. The crucial question became whether they should be amended or completely replaced. The Revolutionary War from 1765 to 1783 preceded the Articles of Confederation, which lasted from 1776 to 1787. These articles, intended as a treaty, were weak, lacking a national government and the power to tax or regulate commerce. Key weaknesses of the articles included no executive branch, inability to regulate commerce or tax, economic crises, and local rivalries. Real power remained with the states. This slide reinforces the historical context, highlighting the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation and the states' dominance during this period. Considering the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, what key issues and competing interests do you think were central to the Constitutional Convention from your ethno-region's perspective? Elaborate on your reasoning. The Deep South, for example, had specific interests influencing their approach to the Constitution, reflecting the sectional nature of the founding period.